Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Tarusian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into machine minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds. I'm your host, Greg Tarusian, founder of Samson Rose, your robotics talent search partner. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Zac Engler, founder of Bodhi AI. Thanks for being on the show today, Zac.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
My pleasure. Let's jump into it. Well, firstly, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. And I know that you and I have a lot of similarities, shared passions and interests, and we'll get into all of that for everyone. But let's just start with a quick intro. So in a sentence or two, what does Bodhi AI do? What's it all about?
Yeah, for sure. We're entering this unique era of, in my opinion, like exponential technology taking off throughout the world. And at Bodhi AI, we really envision a future where innovation fuels sustainable progress and education empowers leadership, and human-machine collaboration really can help unlock that kind of unprecedented potential where the cost of knowledge is trending to zero. And when everybody has access to that, some really cool things can happen. And, by harnessing the power of AI, essentially we can strive to create tools and solutions and even new businesses in many instances that will foster more creativity, more efficiency, and hopefully societal advancement.
Amazing. That's very timely, very accurate as well from where we're at in the world right now and in the tech space. But look, before we dig into that,
those are like the grandiose goals, right?
Yeah, no, but it's true.
I'm just like trying to teach companies how to use AI as a growth engine, not a headcount cutting tool. Like if you really want to pair it.
Great way of putting it. But before we dive more into Bodhi and your work, can you take us back? What were you doing before you started this company? And were there any pivotal experiences or a particular nudge that you were like, hey, I need to found a company in this space?
Yeah, for sure. So for those that don't know, my background's in HR, training and development, talent acquisition, such as yourself. And I've always just been really deeply passionate about technology. I remember watching some of Steve Jobs' keynotes on Apple computers and then the iPod and the iPhone, and just being so tied into the whole technology space, even at a young age, to the point where then I even went to go work for Apple for a while. I went on to work for companies like Amplifone, which does healthcare technology, Par Systems, which does industrial robotics, and most recently, Sanctuary AI, which is a company developing one of the world's first humanoid robots with human intelligence. And my journey through this kind of AI craziness really started with Tim Urban's Wait But Why article on the exponential growth of AI that came out way back in, I think, 2014, 2015 timeframe. And that led me to then discover Max Tegmark and Nick Bostrom and Kai-Fu Lee. And I read over like 50 books on AI in a span of 2 years and just kind of went full on into it. And, I realized, this was going to be bigger than the internet. This is something I needed to hitch my career wagon to so that I didn't get left behind.
Amazing. I don't know if there's many people that can say they've read that many books on it or have been doing their own personal research in the space for
I should clarify, I listened to the books. I didn't read them, but I did go through them all.
Yeah. I mean, but still, can't read all of those. I'd love to be able to read 50 books in 2 years. I mean, but yeah, got to thank Thank Audible for their help here. So, what was the original spark that led to Bodhi AI? Was there like a problem you personally encountered that set these wheels in motions, or was it, like you said, this over a decade of interest in the space, and suddenly the time was right to do this?
Yeah, it's a bit of both for sure. So, you know, like I said, I thought I needed to work at an AI company because I wasn't going to be writing the code or creating the machine learning systems or any of that. So I went to work for these, automation technology companies. But over time, I saw these tools evolving and getting much easier to use and program and set up. While at Sanctuary, I deployed a transcription tool that essentially saved all of our engineers anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour's worth of their time on interview recap notes. They were taking everything manually and they were having to copy paste everything into the applicant tracking system. And with this new AI system that transcribed the full call, they'd moved it into the ATS automatically. And, we ended up putting over 400 hours back into engineering rather than interviewing. And when I realized that was just one kind of case study for how this could be applied, I saw this massive opportunity to help businesses discover how they can leverage generative AI systems for things in every department. And so that led to the creation of Bodhi AI and me making either the biggest win or the biggest mistake of my life starting this new business. But so far, it's been a lot of fun and really engaging.
Okay, well, I'm rooting for a win here, so and I think you're on the right track. Um, okay, so early days, right? You've started this company. The idea is there. What was your first move once you decide like this is what I'm going to do? Talk us through that early bet the farm decision, sleepless nights. I know you're still in building mode and stuff like that, but I'm curious about it personally. But then also, we obviously have a lot of people that listen and they're like, when do I take the plunge on doing something like this?
Absolutely. So, I wouldn't recommend this for everybody, especially somebody that just had their third child. Um, but, but the very first thing I did was I stood up my new website. I stood up my social media presence to just have that face to the general public of what is Bodhi, what does Bodhi do, and how do we help our clients. And we do that through AI training, AI strategy, and custom AI agent development. And so I wanted to make sure that I could showcase ways that I was doing that. So I went through a chief AI officer certification from chiefaiofficer.com. I then connected with my first clients and started building out case studies and examples of how this technology could deliver value for customers. And the first client, luckily out of the gates, was a really great example of that, where they needed a custom website, they needed a custom chatbot, and they needed an automated onboarding process for a financial education platform that they were rolling out. Now, typically, it would take a standard IT company anywhere from 4 to 6 months to develop a site like this and a chatbot and an onboarding automation. And it would cost the user somewhere from $50,000 to $70,000 upfront. Or sometimes they maybe stage it out, but either way, that's a lot of upfront costs. I was able to build all of that in less than 3 weeks, and I was able to do it for less than $1,000, which just dramatically impacted the client's overall speed to market, as well as the hit to their pocketbook. Now, I'll caveat that I did agree to a 20% commission on the back end with the client. And the reason for that was I wanted their success to be my success. I wanted them to feel confident that what they were rolling out was actually going to deliver value for their business. And so we were both able to gain from that. I ended up getting close to what a typical IT firm would charge anyways, but I did it, I feel like, in a more sustainable way that also gave them the confidence in me up front of not just walking away once the stuff was built.
I think stuff like that, pricing strategy, pricing models, so important, especially if you're going after small businesses, startups, or even if you're new. That's something that people really need to think through when they're making an offer, because you can't come in and charge the same that the big people, the big companies, the big dogs in the industries are charging. And especially if you can stand behind your product or your service and have something ingrained like this, like only pay on success, be tied to a commission, etc. It creates so much more, what's the word that I'm looking for? Not value, but like trust, and you're embedded in their success as well. So that's great. I was going to say, please tell me you didn't just charge them $1,000 for all of that, because we need to talk about that. But it's great that you've got the commission
Yes.
element.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, like you said, trust is key. I mean, I'm a recruiter. I did not write code in my background. I did not have a computer science degree, but these tools are getting so dynamic and so usable that literally anybody can do it. You just need to have the time and the dedication to actually learn this new kind of style and, vibe coding way of
Vibe
getting things
coding. Yeah.
done.
I love the name, to be fair. Okay, so talk me through who are your target customers and what kind of operators benefit the most from Bodhi AI's work.
Yeah, for sure. So this is evolving as always with a new business, but target customers are really small to mid-sized businesses, um, and on the like custom agent side of things, and more of the larger to mid to large size businesses on the training side of what I do. Um, because at the end of the day, like a lot of these companies are just being sold AI magic. They're told AI is going to come in and it's going to fix all your problems. But what they get instead is usually like more complexity, more confusion, a bunch of tools that they don't know how they work or what they're connected to or what they're sharing with the cloud. And so, Bodhi really tries to bring everything back to earth and say, like, what are the practical ways we can roll out AI in sustainable ways that aren't just like buzzwords that, are going to catch your team off guard. They're really this idea of like, how do we work through shiny object syndrome, right? Like you once you get into AI, then you realize there's almost a tool for everything. So it's really like winnowing down and figuring out what are the tools that are going to make the most beneficial impact to the department that is the top priority for your business first, and then work backwards from there and figure out, okay, now how do we like claw back costs on the back end once we can kind of prove out this new methodology of getting work done.
Yeah, so true. I mean, we spoke offline just before we hit record, and I'm in a similar boat, right? I know the value, I know the importance, I know the use cases, but it's analysis paralysis or just overwhelm. Every day it feels like there's new tools doing really cool things, and you can implement them in some way in your business, or there's some stuff that you don't know what you don't know, and you want to use it, but how do I fit it in? And then you hit the roadblock of, well, I have a day job, I have other priorities, how can I spend the time to research all this stuff and make it effective for me? Because that's what I find with a lot of new tools and systems is if they're not sticky, if the onboarding and if the integration isn't smooth, you just like, why would I pay for it? Why would I continue paying for it? Or why will I adopt it? So
Well, yeah.
sounds like you're,
And luckily you're running your own show, you don't have to deal with necessarily like the policy and governance elements as well that a lot of larger businesses have to deal with. And sometimes that can be really tricky to navigate too, of like the owner wants one thing, the executive team in one department wants another. Figuring out what's a policy that's going to work for the organization and then how to actually govern that throughout the employees' experience, I think is also a pretty key piece of the puzzle here.
but talk me through what onboarding looks like if a company comes to you and says, hey, I need, maybe they don't even know what they really need, right? There's probably like some sort of intake session that you do, but what does it look like once someone's like, hey, I'm interested in utilizing your services, but I'm in the dark, help me out?
Yeah. It's fairly quick and light. It's usually kicks off with like a 60 to 90 minute discovery process where we work through, what are your business priorities? Where are the biggest costs being driven? Where are your largest amounts of revenue being driven? And then which of those priorities do you want to chase after with streamlining and automating with agentic workflows? And then from there, we'll usually build out like a 30, 60, 90-day plan of what are the quick wins? What are the tools that we can get in place from an operational standpoint to get your teams working more effectively just on a day-to-day basis? That could be things like ChatGPT or Perplexity. And then what are in the longer term, like the 60-day, the 90-day elements, what are those like infrastructure elements where we're going to build out like custom AI agent workflows that are going to support actual tasks within the business and really not necessarily replace people, but complement the work that they're doing.
Awesome. That leads me into something else that I wanted to touch on with you, because everyone's obviously talking about AI eating jobs, just taking over, replacing people, etc. But from where you sit, and are we talking about just enhancing what people are already doing, or making more efficient, augmentation, or are there things that can completely be replaced? Do you think human always needs to be in the loop? What's your perspective?
That's the $1 trillion
Loaded
question.
question. Yeah.
That's the $1 trillion question, right? Of like, are people going to be replaced? I think if you're unwilling to flex or unwilling to learn, yeah, absolutely. Like, I think my favorite quote that I've heard over the last few years is, it's not the AI that's going to replace you; it's somebody using AI that's going to replace you. And so,
Yeah.
you know, there's tons of layoffs happening in the tech space right now, and I think that's a bit overstated to a degree. I think part of that is just padding, the bottom line for the sake of the next shareholder meeting. But
Right.
I think where companies that are rethinking this sustainably, what they're doing is they're saying, what's like 60% of this role that's rules based or repetitive or manually tracked, and how do we automate that element so that the other 40% where judgment and relationships and creativity come into play can be better managed and more easily facilitated by actual people. And
Yeah.
companies don't adapt or retrain or redesign the roles to integrate AI, then yes, I think those positions will get replaced, but not by the AI itself. And I think that's again kind of one
Yeah.
of those areas that if we get to a point where AI is continually improving exponentially, hypothetically, you get to a point where AI can literally do everything that a person could do. So at some stage, if this trajectory, this hockey stick keeps going up as it has been, then yeah, I think we'll get a chance to rediscover how society can work at some point here in the not too distant future as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Very.
What do you think the most overhyped narrative in AI is right now? Is it about this replacement, or is there something else?
I personally think that like the overhyped element is probably like like AI is just plug and play magic. Like AI is just suddenly going to make every business, 10% faster and with 90% less headcount. I think that mindset is just dangerous, and it skips like the really hard part of all of this, which is like AI doesn't fix bad like bad responses or bad processes or like bad strategy for that matter.
Yeah.
Just you've talked to Chat GPT, that if you give it a bad question, it's going to give you bad answers. And so the truth is like AI is only as useful as the problems that it's aimed at. And without that, we're just automating chaos, It's just like
Yeah.
the
Yeah. That's a
companies
good
are
point.
seeing real ROI are the ones that are starting small. And like I said, figuring out where is the top priority for our business where we can strategically and tactically implement these tools and practices. And then just like you build a muscle, you build your team's ability to work effectively with AI systems, and you scale out
Yeah.
from there and you go wider as time goes on.
That's, yeah, very good point. If you had a magic wand and you can instantly change one thing about how enterprise AI is adopted today, or how these customers that you're probably engaging with would adopt it, what would that be?
I think like the areas of like education, adoption, and experimentation are pretty crucial here. Like blanket bans on AI don't work. And in fact, I don't know if I had an article feature recently in the Daily Upside talking about shadow AI, right? Like shadow AI is like Steve is told he can't use ChatGPT at work. So after work is done, he goes home and uses it anyways, and then magically comes into work the next day with the report
With
being
it
done.
completed.
It's happening. And it's
Yeah.
something I think a lot of businesses need to take seriously and think about how do we provide these tools in a meaningful way? How do we encourage iteration, right? Of working through the different challenges that these tools present. And then how do we start working through achieving that like agentic workflow in a meaningful way for our teams? Because from my perspective, every client I'm talking to, I'm sharing like, you have 18 months to figure this out, right? Like you have 18 months to figure this out, because what's happening right now is all of the leaders in these niche industries are figuring out how to deploy agents, AI agents, right? So they're doing autonomous work at some degree. And those agents are just going to get faster. They're just going to get better. They don't eat, they don't sleep, they don't need health benefits, they don't need time off. And over the course of the next 18 months, that's going to get exponentially better, to a point where if you don't have your agents in place by the time the next big chat GPT model releases, or the next Copilot or Gemini or DeepSeek or whatever, you're essentially going to be at a complete massive disadvantage, where the distance between how fast those companies can now operate and what you would need to do from an investment perspective to even keep up is just unrealistic. So I don't mean to be like a doomer by any means, but I do try to say like, adoption and iteration is much more valuable than just like saying hands off, we'll wait and see how this all blows over.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's like a doomer perspective at all. I think it's like reality check and part of the service that you're probably providing, because a lot of people need to hear that, including myself. Like I said, you can be as aware or embedded in the space as you want, but then just not be active in adopting and utilizing. And you're right, the people who aren't using it will get replaced by the people that are, and that's going to be the same for individuals as well as businesses. If you can run more efficiently, effectively, even like get information quicker and have so much more automated, then you're going to beat your competitors in that time frame, right? Stretch it out over that 18 months, stretch it out over 5 years. If you're still around, you'll see who's performing better.
Well, totally. I mean, if a former recruiter can come in and do in 3 weeks what a typical company does in 4 months, like,
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about here, applied at scale.
yeah. I can see for some people it's very worrying, like, oh, I just studied all this time to be X, right? Copywriter, software engineer, whatever it is. And then these tools, but they're helpful, they're useful. It's not, any regular person off the street isn't going to all of a sudden decide like, hey, you know what, I want to be a software engineer and be able to do it overnight. It's still using the tools and doing it properly and having some level of knowledge to make it useful, and to produce good stuff, whether it's content, whether it is websites, whether it is systems, processes, agents, whatever. A 10-year-old can't do that.
Not yet.
So people,
But
not yet, but I'm sure it's coming. So let's shift gears now. I want to talk about something that is close to our hearts. If anyone knows about hiring, it's going to be you. Your career predominantly was in the talent space and HR space, like myself, and you've helped build teams for some awesome companies, right? You mentioned some of them there, Apple included. So what roles, when you start scaling Bodhi AI, what will you prioritize early on? Or are you going to, just kind of like a tangent, but I've seen recently like people tweeting about and writing blog posts about, startups now can be one person doing 5 things with agents. Is that the model you would take at first before you start hiring other people?
Well, that's a model I've already taken to a degree.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
If you go to my website, bodhiai.io, you can chat with Cynthia. She's my VR assistant. I started saying virtual assistant, but a virtual assistant is a real thing. That's like a person in the Philippines doing, calls and stuff. She's like a actually virtual person. And she'll answer questions about my company. She'll answer questions about the website. And then she'll even schedule a call to have a discovery call with me. And on the back end, there's other elements that Cynthia handles for me as well. And that'll get me to a point. But then from there, I'm going to really prioritize like delivery and speed right now so that I can scale in the future, because at least from my perspective right now, you can't necessarily scale just as yourself. And so I'm probably going to be looking for like an AI workflow and builder and like automation engineer as the next hire for Bodhi. And then beyond that, it'll likely be like some type of ops manager, both of which would have, orchestrated agent setups that they work with within their respective realms. And I kind of see that as like the future of the agency, right? Of you hire maybe 5 to 10 really great people to oversee the typical like departments of a business. And instead of working with entire departments, they're working with agentic systems. And really you're only inserting people in areas where you need a human in the loop, or you have human to human interactions happening. And I don't know if you saw this or not, but I shared in a blog post recently and was featured in Forbes, this idea of like the trifurcation of work, where a lot of people think it's just AI or people. There's no split, but there is that kind of third ground where it's AI and people collaborating together. So instead of a bifurcation, I call it a trifurcation. You figure out what are the things AI is really good at. You assign that to the AI. You find what are the things that you need a human in the loop on to just maybe approve what the AI did. And then you find what are those key areas where you only want a person handling the different elements of a process. From a recruiting perspective, I think that's pretty straightforward, right? Like you have a white glove recruiting experience for your clients where they're working with a person, throughout the process so that you can have that trust. But maybe on the back end, there's automated elements to your business where you don't necessarily need to do the, scheduling of client calls or building out the different documents for the strategy session and the sourcing session and all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that perspective because people always talk about, oh, do you think, or ask, what do you think your job or what parts of your job will get completely replaced by AI? And obviously, like you mentioned there's certain things, scheduling and admin and stuff like that, of course. But when you're in a people business, or if you're doing something that definitely requires people or collaboration or personal experiences or whatever, you're not going to get around that. You need a human. Kind of leads me to something else that I was thinking. There's obviously a lot of these tools, even if we just look at the big ones that are out there, like Claude and ChatGPT, Perplexity, etc. How do you know, or how do you decide which one is good for a particular thing, or like a general purpose one? Because everything seems to have it now. My WhatsApp has it, and Facebook has it, and anything I open now has an AI chatbot or system in there. But that, even for a general public, right? If I talk to my mom, she's overwhelmed. She doesn't know what to do with it, and obviously she's very removed from tech. But from a business professional standpoint, is there one that people should lean to for like general stuff, or one that's better to train for what you need?
Yeah. One area that I think is crucial here is understanding the benefits of what AI can deliver and the drawbacks that it come with it, right? So hallucination from an AI system is a very real problem and still happens very often with all of the major models, whether you're working with ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever. So understanding how to navigate hallucination and how that plays a part in the process, I think is pretty key. That's why I personally really preferred working with Perplexity to a certain degree for a lot of the like day-to-day research type work that I do when I'm looking for known good sources of information. Perplexity actually adds in like cited sources where you can go click on the website. You can validate that what the AI just told you isn't complete BS and it didn't just, make it up on the spot. But then you can even like dig into those resources further and ask more questions of the AI of those resources. You can build shared spaces in Perplexity so that if you're working collaboratively with a client or a team of people, you can all share your plexes or whatever they call, so that you can coordinate your efforts together. And you can even broadcast that what you're doing out to the world if you want to. So from a marketing perspective, it can add value there as well. So you really get a lot out of it. They have the deep research feature as well, just like OpenAI and DeepSeek. And as far as I know so far, they're not hooked up to any sort of like deep state research elements that might be sending all your information to an overseas server. So I think, that idea that you need to do what's right for your business, right? Like you need to find the tools that are going to serve your business in the way it needs to be served. Sometimes an open source, completely free version of like Llama or Hugging Face might be fine. You're not sharing IP, you're not sharing patents, you're not sharing proprietary information with the system, and it's fine to just get your work done. But there are instances then where, depending on your business, if you're in the healthcare space, if you're in the legal space, you might need to actually do like a self-hosted, on-site, on-prem, large language model yourself, and that might actually be the most secure way for your business to continue adopting AI in a way that will allow you to use the tools but keep it secure.
A great point. I'm glad you brought that up as well. Yeah, because there's obviously a lot of industries that, or companies that have a lot of proprietary data and need to have a lot better control over it. So that's a great point. Yeah, I'm very interested in exploring Perplexity more. I saw Aravind speak at the Upfront Summit. He was just talking about what they've got working on and the tool and how they're set up and how it's different to all the others. And it's really interesting. I haven't really explored it, so I should. That's my bad. Another one to add to the list.
Yeah, beyond that, at like more of the developer level, there's new like agent to agent protocols coming online. Agent to agent is one that's created by Google, which allows different AI agents to talk to each other. There's another one called the MCP, or Model Context Protocol, which allows an agent to essentially go out and look for whatever tools it needs access to through APIs, and then leverage those tools in its workflow without you having to manually build all those interconnected elements. And I think those are two key elements from a developer perspective that are pretty cool. I don't know if you knew this or not, but the news agency Reuters has a head office here in Minnesota, where I'm based. And I was talking to one of the developers there that's working on their co-counsel large language model. He's not only using Cursor as his like development buddy, AI buddy, writing 70% of his code, but he's also then using an MCP protocol so that agent can go out and leverage different tools within his development ecosystem on his behalf.
Wow.
This is what I'm talking about when you're like, think about the velocity that one person now has. He's doing the job of like 10 developers with these tools. And that's what I think we're looking at here in the next 18 months for everybody, right? Like it's not going to just be software developers.
So when it goes out to look for other tools, like you said, it's in his ecosystem. Does it have to be something that he already has like a license for or a subscription for or something like that? Or does it go and find new things and be like, hey, we need to use this?
Yeah. So you have to have access to it to a degree. So a lot of companies have set up public APIs that MCP servers can now access. So you just point it at like a directory and it'll go and say like, find me the scheduling tool or find me the search tool. But you still need to have access to it. You still need to have a license to it. And then there's also people that have been developing like internal only versions of this, which is really cool.
Awesome. I know we went completely off track from the talent side, but this let's bring it back there before we start to wrap up. But you have done a lot of hiring for the startup space and just tech companies in general, and you're in that position now again. But are there any particular signals or characteristics or something that you look for when you're hiring someone to start a company similar to yours or at an early stage that's moving really fast in high tech environments?
Yeah, for sure. I think learning agility is one core competency that everybody needs to have if they want to perform in this space. And it's not because you need to learn specific things. It's because you need to be able to adapt to everything that's coming as quickly as it is. I think trustworthiness is also another key element to all of this, as AI allows things to open up more. Like I said earlier, knowledge is now trending to cost nothing. And so in an environment where you have literally access to the world history of knowledge by just a few keystrokes, being able to know that the people you're working with you can rely on is crucial. And then the last piece that I look for is like, what's your track record of outcomes? Like, do you have a history of quality outcomes that you can point to? And I don't care if that's as an intern or as a 10-year professional. I want to be able to look through your history and see, like, how did you raise the bar? How did you elevate the performance of your team, regardless of what your domain is? And I think those three areas for me have always been really key elements in the interview process. And now I'm seeing that just in like day-to-day work as well.
Yeah, definitely. Strong data points to look at for sure. And how would you advise people to keep like a high trust, high performance culture while trying to scale technical complexity or even just stay innovative, right? You've got to, I always find, and I like to ask the question, but it's a hard balance of what's the right business thing, how can we stay performing in the right way and do what's right for the customer, but be innovative.
The biggest mistake I've seen people make is not talking to their people as regularly as they should. Both in organizations I've worked with and as a consultancy and organizations that I've worked at, like, for some reason, there's people in this day and age who think because you can work remotely and because your team is just your team, you can just like set them on a task and not talk to them for a month. And that doesn't work in this day and age. If you want to build trust, you should be talking to your team at least twice a week, even if it's 15 minutes and you're just having like a virtual coffee together. It doesn't matter. It's that face-to-face, that connection, that the building the rapport that used to happen in the office and now oftentimes happens remote, that like you should be on top of. You should constantly have those touch points. You should, and you can dial it back over time, perhaps once that trust is established. But if you've got a new hire, you should be shoulder to shoulder with that person, like getting into the trenches, helping them feel supported, and help. But that also goes for like maybe a tenured person who's now learning a new task. And so I always try to recommend situational leadership as a key takeaway for any business leader to dive into and learn, like, how do you accommodate the learning style of your team member specifically on what they're trying to accomplish. And so I think that could be a really helpful piece of advice for the folks that are trying to navigate this new dynamic space of, hey, I've got this guy, he's been a developer for 20 years, but now he's learning this new thing. How do I maintain that working relationship in an effective way?
That's great advice. What are you most excited about right now, either with the work that you're doing at Bodhi or in the broader tech ecosystem as a whole?
Personally, I love the prospect that I'm gaining more clients and that I'm,
as you should,
like, having fun with them. Yeah, like, but like we're having meaningful conversations that are driving business value for their business, which is like super fun for me. But beyond like just the work stuff, back in 2016, I wrote a series of blog posts about AI, and you can go to my website, www.zacengler.com. The timestamps are still there. Some of the links are probably broken because I haven't maintained it, but you can see, like, April 6th, 2016 was my first article. And I wrote about this like exponential trajectory that AI is on right now. And my hypothesis was basically, if AI is going to continue to exponentially improve and computing power is going to continually improve, at some point we're going to cross the threshold where there's a supercomputer that it matches the human brain, right? And I did some back of the napkin math. I went into an Excel spreadsheet and just like drew out a calculation for the next 40 years. And I threw that up on the website. The chart's still there. The calculations are still there. And surprisingly enough, I have, even though I didn't keep up the blog, I have watched the progress. And every 6 months, you can see the top 500 supercomputer rankings. They're publicly posted. And it's been following my chart almost to the T. In fact, it's a slightly than what I predicted. And I'm not alone in this prediction. Like, if you look at people like Leopold Aschenbrenner, or some of the other OpenAI folks that have come out now and mapped out like this trajectory to artificial general intelligence, they're all saying very similar things. But the timeline that I had established was sometime in 2027. we'll probably have a supercomputer that at least has the hardware of the capabilities of the human brain. But that means that you also need the software then to function on that. And so I think that still may take a little time to coax out. So we'll see what those actual timelines end up being. But it's just been really cool and fun to watch all of this kind of like take place. And that's where I try to help my clients understand, like, this is where things are going. You can't just look at your next quarter or even your next year anymore. You really do have to have a longer view of how is this technology going to play a part of my future.
Amazing. I'm going to link all of this in the show notes, by the way. But yeah, that's great. And I did look at it after our initial chat a while back, and yeah, it's pretty crazy to see. If there was one brutally honest piece of advice that you could give someone building an AI startup in this day and age in 2025, what would that be?
Yeah, I love the Yoda quote, "You must unlearn what you have learned." Like, we're entering a new era where anybody who tells you they know what's going to happen once AI achieves human level capacity is just full of BS. Like, once this stuff reaches escape velocity, they call it a singularity because you can't know what's on the other side of it. And so you can hypothesize and you can think of different ways that it's going to impact people, but nobody really knows how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, or what people are going to do when it happens, And so I think the best thing that you can do right now is just pare back all of the preconceived notions that you have about how the world functions, how work should function, and start looking at, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? Were you recently laid off? Look at this as an opportunity to retool your career towards this new trajectory. Are you in a business that's floundering? How can you start leveraging some of these tools to maximize your capacity? And I think the other key piece to all of this is thinking about, like, how do you get ready for this new way of doing things? Because if you can do that, like, all the technology and all the world's knowledge is literally at your fingertips, and it's just up on you then to take advantage of that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And how do you?
I like
Yeah.
I like to say the phrase, like, we're all in a race,
Yeah.
whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And the race is, can you achieve your dream before somebody else does?
That's cool. I like that. I might have to start borrowing that phrase.
There you go.
Sorry, I realize I'm doing like rapid fire stuff because I know we're getting close to the end and there's just a few things I want to cover and get your perspective on. So, how do you personally stay sharp and avoid burnout being a new founder, and juggling so many things?
Family.
Yeah.
Like, I have an amazing family that's incredibly supportive. I have parents that are supportive, in-laws that are supportive, a wife that's supportive, 3 kids that are supportive, and I could not do it without that behind me. Not only is it like a driver, but it's just something that gives me the fuel I need to, stay up the extra 2 hours to get that workflow done, or to do the quote, or to put together the PowerPoint or the website, or you name it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. What is one tech prediction that you'd bet your reputation on?
Besides the continual progression of exponential AI.
I guess we could use that, unless there's something else you have.
So, I would say, like, vertical AI, or more specifically hyper nichification, is definitely going to be a key area that if you want to dive in and be successful, you are going to, like, not just be a marketing agency, you're going to be a marketing agency that caters to HVAC repair technicians, or an AI agency that caters to custom built roofers, or a data migration agency that only focuses on businesses that do like, I don't know, plumbing and heating. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
This idea that you're going to narrow down and into a very specific niche is going to allow you to tap into that market more quickly, and then you can broaden out from there.
So you think that's a great way for people to start? Like, if you're going after, pick one niche, be very narrow, go into that, and then rinse and repeat into other places if you need to.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. Like, you can dive into being the best AI company for dentists. And then, it's not that far of a step once you build up your capabilities to then move into chiropractors or orthodontists or, vision care or whatever. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that. What's your favorite book or a resource that you would recommend to every founder?
So this is one where I do have a favorite book. I'll give that answer. But for me, it's my own book. So I'm working on a new book. It's called Turning on Machines. It'll be, I just got published approval, and it will likely be launched hopefully by the end of summer.
Amazing. Congrats.
And the idea is it's a book that explores how we work with AI, how we live with AI, and how we love with AI. And it goes through a 3-part series that essentially helps you understand how has technology evolved up until this point? How will people rebel against technology given any set of circumstances? And then how will people adopt and gain affinity for technology? At the end of each chapter, there's a self-reflection point as well, so that the reader can really digest, how is this all impacting me personally, and what am I going to do about it? Because so much of this is out of our sphere of control. I think finding the best way to get it back into your sphere of control is the most powerful thing you can do.
Yeah, that's really cool. It does feel like that, right? And it's great to hear you put it into those words, because so much is happening either without your knowledge, and you're definitely not in control. It's how you utilize that, how you make it your own. Is there a startup?
That being said, go read The Second Machine Age by Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee. That book changed my life, and I think it would change anybody's life.
Great. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. So much here, so many notes to take. Last question before we wrap. Is there a startup idea that you would be doing now if you weren't working on Bodhi AI?
There's actually 2.
Oh, really? You sure you want to give them?
And I'm not going to give them.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, the high level. Yeah. Let me think if there's one that I would share. But I have 2 stealth startups. One is focused on business development, using AI to enhance business development. The other is focused on the sale of businesses. So how do you facilitate a business, once it's either time for the owner to exit, or let's say you're just moving on to other things. And so those are 2 areas that I think, this idea that we want to get this AI ball rolling in a direction that helps build things rather than tear things down is really my focus. If I could personally just wave a magic wand and have an app appear, it would be focused on education and how do we revitalize and pare back the administrative costs of education so that we can bring down the overall cost of education. And I guess you could say the same for healthcare to a degree. Those would be areas that I would love to go play in the future and explore.
Awesome. Look, Zac, this has been amazing. Thank you for taking the time, for sharing all your insights. And I know you're a fountain of knowledge in this space, so I'm sure there's more. You'll probably do another episode at some point as well.
I would love to. Yeah. No, this is fantastic. And I love the show. I can't tell you how many episodes I've listened to at this point. I gained so much just from hearing what other people are doing in this space. And I'm just so excited to now get to be a part of it.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. That means a lot. Where can our listeners find you? I know you've given us a bunch of links, and we're going to include these in the show notes, but where's the best place to find you and follow along with everything that you're doing?
Yeah. LinkedIn is where I eat, sleep, and breathe all things. So if you're looking to connect, I'd love to get connected and learn more about what your business is doing with AI. That being said, I do have a company site, bodhiai.io. I've also built a website called Minnesota AI Tools, or mnaitools.com. My goal there is really to just showcase AI tools that are relevant by department. So marketing, finance, HR, etc. And then highlight businesses in Minnesota that are leveraging AI for success. Lastly, I am selling ad space on the site, but 5% of the proceeds go to protect the Minnesota boundary waters. And, I think that's maybe one key takeaway from all of this, that I think every business should be thinking about, as we reap the benefits of these exponential technologies, how do we use them for good? How do we bring, that back to the community in a meaningful way?
Love that. Yeah. Great thing to end on. Well, thank you so much again for your time. This has been great. Let's keep in touch. And I'm excited for everyone to hear this and get all of this knowledge that you've shared. So thanks again, Zac.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. It's been awesome.